In recent years, the world has seen a significant transformation in naval military dynamics, especially with China's rapid growth as a global power. One of the most ambitious and controversial projects that has been gaining prominence is the construction of what can become the largest nuclear aircraft carrier in the world. This project not only symbolizes the Chinese search for military protagonism, but also raises profound strategic issues about the future of U.S. naval supremacy, which has so far dominated the seas for over 7 decades. The growth of the Popular Liberation Army Navy plan is one of the pillars of this ambition. Since the launch of its first aircraft carrier in 2012, China has been expanding its fleet with increasingly sophisticated models. The new nuclear aircraft carrier under construction represents a true game turnover, not just for size and capacity, but by embedded nuclear propulsion technology, which allows greater reach and operational autonomy. This evolution places China in an unprecedented position to rival U.S. Navy in international waters. But what does it really mean having a nuclear aircraft carrier? Traditionally, vessels of this type have nuclear reactors that generate energy to move the ship, eliminating the need for frequent stops for replenishment. This allows longer missions and constant presence in strategic regions, something essential for global power projection. In addition, nuclear aircraft holders have upper air release capabilities and may operate a larger variety of aircraft, from state-of-the-art fighters to early alert aircraft. In practice, this represents a fundamental change in the balance of forces in the Pacific and in the world. The Chinese presence in areas such as the Southern Sea of China, highly contested by several countries, can be reinforced with the ability to quickly mobilize naval air force, supported by this new platform. This movement worries strategists from the United States, which see control of seas as a crucial element for their national security and maintenance of the international order that prevails since the end of World War II. PR. However, this technological race is not free of challenges. Operation of high-sea nuclear reactors requires technical expertise and strict safety protocols. China has invested heavily in training and research to ensure that this project is not only completed, but also that it can be operationalized effectively and safely. In addition, there is the geopolitical issue, where the expansion of the Chinese military presence can generate tensions with other powers, not only the US but also allies like Japan, Australia, and India. In this context, the construction of the largest nuclear aircraft in the world by China is more than a technological feat. It is a calculated strategic movement that reflects the country's desire to affirm its influence on the international scene and challenge American hegemony. The complexity of this process involves economic, military, technological, and diplomatic aspects, and will certainly have lasting impacts on global balance. As we follow the advances in the construction of this colossal ship, it is important to understand the broader implications. How will it affect regional security? What will be the responses of the United States and its allies? And how naval dynamics could evolve over the next 25 years? This story is far from just a ship, but about the future of power in the sea and, consequently, in the world. To understand the real impact of this new Chinese nuclear aircraft carrier, it is essential to look more in detail for its technical abilities and the role it can play in the country's naval strategy. Unlike conventional aircraft carriers, which depend on diesel or gas turbines, the nuclear reactor allows the ship to operate for years without replenishment. This means that China will be able to maintain a permanent naval presence in distant areas, something to date exclusive to the United States. The advertised size of the aircraft carrier exceeds any similar vessel. The larger dimensions are not just a matter of prestige, but allow the transport of a much larger number of aircraft, including state-of-the-art stealth fighters, recognition drones, and early warning aircraft. This variety allows a significant operational flexibility, with the ability to perform missions ranging from air control and anti-aircraft defense to land and sea target accuracy attacks. In addition, Chinese technology incorporated on this ship has advanced radar systems, communications, and electronic war. This ensures a significant advantage in a modern scenario where information and the ability to interact with multiple platforms in real time are decisive. The integration of these systems allows the aircraft carrier to be the core of a highly coordinated naval group, capable of operating autonomously or in conjunction with other naval forces. Another important aspect is nuclear propulsion, which, in addition to increasing operational range, contributes to a higher and more sustainable speed compared to conventional vessels. This tactical advantage is fundamental for quick displacement in conflict theaters, enabling agile responses to emerging threats or strengthening strategic positions quickly. However, this naval expansion of China occurs in an increasingly complex and tense international environment. The United States, which currently has the largest nuclear aircraft fleet in the world, closely monitor these advances. For Washington, seize control is vital to keep their commercial routes, military bases spread across the globe, and the ability to project power in various regions simultaneously. Therefore, the construction of this Chinese aircraft carrier is not only a technological framework, but also a symbol of the new arms race that is drawn in the 21st century. The rivalry between China and the United States goes beyond the simple economic competition and translates into a strategic battle for the control of seas, with direct consequences for global security. American allies, such as Japan, South Korea, Australia, and India, also follow this evolution with concern. The reinforced Chinese presence in the Pacific waters may alter regional balance and increase the risk of military clashes in disputed areas. This puts additional pressure on existing alliances and can boost a new wave of defense investments in the region. The U.S. response to this challenge involves the modernization of its fleet, the development of new technologies, and the search for reinforced strategic alliances. At the same time, diplomacy remains a key piece, with efforts to maintain open dialogue channels and prevent naval competition from becoming open conflict. Therefore, the largest Chinese nuclear aircraft carrier is much more than a simple vessel. It represents a transformation in China's ability to influence the global geopolitical environment. Its construction marks a moment when the American naval supremacy, which seemed indisputable, begins to be questioned concretely. While the world observes, construction advances in Chinese shipyards, with equipment and technology that until recently seemed exclusive to established powers. The result of this ambition can redesign the 21st century strategic map and determine who will have control of seas in the next quarter of the century. With the construction of the largest nuclear aircraft carrier in history, China takes a decisive step towards its goal of consolidating itself as a naval superpower. The magnitude of this project reveals not only the growing military power of the country, but also the evolution of its industrial and technological capacity. For decades, China has been seen as a continental power, focusing on defending its terrestrial borders. Now, clearly, he wants to expand his presence far beyond its territorial waters, projecting strength and influence in strategic regions around the world. This movement is part of a larger strategy, known as the Great Rejuvenescence of the Chinese nation, which seeks to restore the country's position as one of the most influential centers of the international system. The modernization of the Navy and the construction of the super aircraft carriers are central elements of this vision. After all, to be a global power, it is not enough to have a strong economy. You need to be able to defend interests anywhere on the planet, ensure commercial routes, and influence geopolitical decisions. The impact of this advance is particularly meaning in the Indo-Pacific region, where several territorial disputes already feed tensions. The Southern Sea of China is an emblematic example, an area rich in natural resources, through which $1 trillion in trade is over annually. The presence of a Chinese nuclear aircraft carrier in these waters exponentially increases Beijing's dissuasive ability, reinforcing his territorial claims and making any attempt at contestation from neighboring nations or external powers difficult. On the other hand, the response from the United States is not limited to the modernization of its fleet. Washington intensified his operations of freedom of navigation in the Southern Sea of China, performing military exercises with allies and reinforcing mutual defense agreements in the region. This scenario creates an environment of permanent tension, with the ever-present risk of incidents that can quickly climb to broader conflicts. In addition to the military dimension, there is also a clear symbolic intention behind the construction of this aircraft carrier, to demonstrate to the world that China has not only reached traditional powers in technological terms, but that it is willing to overcome them. By choosing to build the largest vessel of this type ever conceived, the message is clear. Beijing wants to be seen as leader and innovative, not just as a follower of the Western powers. However, this ambition places significant challenges for China itself. Maintaining a global naval force requires not only modern ships, but also a worldwide logistics bases network, long-term support capacity, and, above all, a diplomacy capable of mitigating resistance and building strategic partnerships. The initiative A Belt, a Route, BRI, already demonstrates the Chinese efforts in this regard, but the permanent military presence in distant regions will require new agreements and continuous adaptation to the complexities of international politics. Finally, it is important to highlight that the construction of this aircraft carrier should not be seen in isolation, but as part of a broader movement of reorganization of global power. The 21st century is no longer dominated exclusively by the West. New powers emerge, with different interests and worldviews. The naval rise of China and the consequent response from the United States illustrate how the balance of forces is increasingly dynamic and unpredictable. The world is moving towards a new era of strategic competition in the seas, where technology, military power, and diplomacy intertwine more and more complex. The largest nuclear aircraft carrier in the world, built by China, is the clearest symbol of this transformation. It is not just an impressive feat of engineering, but a historic milestone that can redefine the international order in the coming decades. While construction advances and tests approach, the international community observes with attention and seizure. The decisions made now, both by Beijing and Washington and his allies, will shape the geopolitical scenario of the next 25 years. The naval race is just beginning, and the future of seas control will undoubtedly be one of the main elements that will define who will have global leadership in this new century.